It's a common sight to see in town. North Memorial's air ambulance flying overhead going to and from Air Lake Airport. North has based one of its helicopters here since 2006, flying weather permitting 24/7 to transport people who need immediate medical care as quickly as possible. Today we're down at Air Lake Airport in Lakeville, and joining us is Michael, who flies from North Memorial Air. Michael, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Nice
So,
to be here.
you are the pilot for the helicopter, am I right?
That's correct.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got into flying or your history?
Sure. Grew up in Hastings. Learned how to fly in Oregon. Did my civilian flight training up there. After completing that, did some instruction in Sacramento, California. And after about a year and a half of that, was down flying out to oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. After that stint, I was doing offshore oil support in Santa Maria, California. And luckily enough, a job opened up here after that, and I've been here for about coming up on 3 years.
All helicopters?
All helicopters.
All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this one here? What is the difference between this and other helicopters?
Sure.
And what it's like to fly?
Sure. This is an Augusta A109C model. It's an Italian helicopter. It is one of the fastest commercial aircraft operating in America. It's a twin-engine helicopter. Each engine has about 450 shaft horsepower. Some of the things that makes this aircraft unique is its ability to fly single pilot IFR. We're able to fly in inclement weather where other aircraft might not be able to by use of instrumentation.
Okay, so I know that when I'm on scenes with like car accidents or some pretty major medicals, that's when we call you guys up.
Sure.
So why don't you tell me what the procedure is like when you get the call?
Well, when we get the call from our dispatch, we have to assess weather's the big issue, and if the weather conditions are suitable, we will launch to that scene. Once we're airborne and close enough to the scene, we'll get up on a radio frequency that can communicate with ground contact. The crew in the back is kind of communicating with them. I'm flying, and there's some critical bits of information we need about that scene situation. Obstacles are a big deal. We have a ground contact kind of walk the area to make sure there isn't anything on our approach or departure path. Once we get there, we'll do a high recon, and we'll do a low recon just to make sure that the pilot and the crew in the back, if able, are able to just kind of take note of what's going on the surface. Then from there, we'll land. They usually have some stoplights or little lights on the ground during the nighttime hours, and some folks kind of guarding the LZ. One of the things that we really watch out for is the tail rotor. It's spinning at such a high velocity that it's invisible. Mm-hmm. So we really got to guard the area around the helicopter. And then from there, same thing as in the way out. We're making sure that the area is clear, there's no people around, and we'll depart to whatever hospital we're going to.
All right, Michael, now we're looking in the cockpit. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what we see in here about your area of the helicopter?
Sure, it's a tight fit. As you can see, we have a patient that's directly to my left.
So when you get paged, how long does it take from tones to in the air, typically?
It depends. You know, we try to stay within 10 minutes of the call, gear up 10 minutes within the call. When we're flying IFR, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to file a flight plan and to check weather.
Okay. And then I know that we're down here at Air Lake. How many other bases are there around Minnesota that you guys?
Sure. North has a base in Redwood Falls, one in Princeton and Brainerd, and our maintenance base is in Crystal. So.
All right. And then what kind of flights, what are your most common calls that you guys go on?
Our most common calls are inter-facility transport. So we'll be picking up a patient at a hospital and transporting them to a hospital with that's more capable of addressing their issues.
Okay, perfect. Well, Michael, thanks for telling us about your role with the helicopter. Now I'm talking to Rob. He is the flight paramedic with North Memorial. Rob, thanks for joining us. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this?
Well, I'm one of the flight paramedics here for North Air Care. And in addition to working in a helicopter, I still work in 911 ambulance, which I have for 28 years.
Okay.
So I've been here on the helicopter for 19 years. And then I'm one half of the crew, so we have a flight paramedic and a flight nurse that work in the back.
Okay, so what's the difference between a paramedic and a nurse?
Yeah, paramedic nationally is more trauma-related, packaging, so 911 emergency, first on scene kind of skills, where nursing is more longer-term, multi-system, critical care patients. And having that complement with the nurse also gives us the ability in the helicopter to provide a whole regiment of different medications that paramedics wouldn't be authorized to administer.
Okay. So, and is every crew like that you work with? Or?
For North Memorial, yeah, we do one paramedic and one nurse, so we think the two disciplines really complement each other based on if we're doing a transfer inter-facility from an ICU to an ICU, or if we're doing a scene flight with the ground ambulance. And here in this area, we're covered by a LINA, and line ambulance is all paramedics, so we interface with them pretty naturally.
Excellent, excellent. And then are you just based out of Air Lake here, or do you rotate around?
Yeah, our crews are actually assigned a main base. And then within the system, we do have a number of casual people that will float to fill in for sick calls or vacation times. So there's opportunities to work other places, but I personally am assigned here at Lakeville.
Okay, excellent. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the back of the helicopter?
Yeah, so basically we're a passenger aircraft that's reconfigured for a medical design with a medical interior. So the passenger seats would have come out, and we've put in a modular bracket to accommodate a stretcher. So this articulates out at a 45 so that this bracket will slide in and out for the patient if we're coming from the hospital or with the ambulance. And then it just articulates in. Feet would rest up where the pilot co-seat would have been, and then the head, neck, chest, the main core of the patient is with us. The paramedic and the nurse sometimes will switch sides depending on which type of patient or whose turn it is to write the chart. Typically on each flight, one of us does the documentation, although we both provide patient intervention.
Is there a weight or a size limit? Because I can see this area here is really pretty snug.
We are definitely built for speed, not comfort. So for the flight crews, we have to be under 200 pounds, and that's in uniform. And for the patient, we don't have a weight requirement, but we do have a girth, because we have to make sure that they can fit within our seat belts and other securing devices based on the FAA requirements. So our seat belt will accommodate 60 to 62 inch girth.
Okay, and ideally, we're there first with the ground medics, and we're just packaging somebody up, trying to prevent things from getting worse.
Two things we rely on the most for scene flights is, number one, someone on that scene securing the landing zone so that we can land safely. And secondly is to have a crew that's begun to stabilize and package the patient for transport. So depending on how soon we are there or how extensive the injuries, if a patient in a vehicle accident needs to be extricated, that time can vary. But we like to have the IVs in and the airway secured before we come into the helicopter, because you can see we can do all of those interventions. It's just not as practical to do it during flight as it is in the back of the ambulance. So usually those things are done prior, because most of our services here are all ALS, so the paramedics can provide those skills. As we go outstate to other services that don't have paramedics, then sometimes we're providing those skills in the back of the ambulance.
And you being on an ambulance and a flight medic, I mean, do you have to think differently, when you're in the back? Or?
I do think differently. What's unique here is we're typically not the first on the scene. Okay. So a lot of the stuff has already been taken care of, or at least it's been initiated. So at that point, depending on the ambulance service, again here in Lakeville, it's a LINA. And those paramedics have got the IVs in, they've got the patient intubated, somewhat stabilized, or if not, we know what else they need to do that we can help them with. Whereas when I respond on the 911 ambulance, I get there first. So it's just kind of that time mentality that changes for the patient acuity. And majority of our flights are transfers, so those patients have somewhat been stabilized at a local hospital. We're spending most of our time changing over the equipment to make them portable, switching over the monitors, switching over the IV medications, getting the paperwork secured for the receiving hospital. Whereas with a scene flight, it's all bets off, depending on what kind of condition the patient's in and what type of scene we're going to.
Well, Rob, thanks for showing us the helicopter and explaining to us the difference between this and an ambulance and what you guys do. And it's good to know that you guys are so close.
Thanks for having us.
When we come back, Fire Chief Mike Meyer shows us some off-road equipment we use here at the fire department.